In this issue of Teaching Notes, we're talking about academic integrity when we're teaching online or we're teaching in these remote courses. One of the tools that have come up in our conversations, yours and my conversations over the summer, has been about SafeAssign. And so I'm wondering if you could give us a sense of how to use it, and then maybe after that we'll have a conversation about what it actually does and what some of its limitations might be. And that way we can use it with our eyes wide open. We know what we're walking into then.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to share my screen here, and you can see my screen. Looks good.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit to make this easier to see. And to set up SafeAssign for any of your assignments, it's actually really, really easy. All you want to do is go through the process of making a Dropbox just like any other. This one, I'm just going to call it test. And then here under submission details, you just need to click this option right here, which is check submissions for plagiarism using SafeAssign. And once you do that, the SafeAssign is enabled for that Dropbox, and anything submitted from that point forward will be checked with SafeAssign. Now to access the SafeAssign report, you just want to, there's a link right below where you type in your grade for that assignment in the Grade Center, that you just click it and it brings up the SafeAssign report. So let me give you a quick look at how what that report actually looks like. This is also a good time to mention that you can, if you're not doing this as part of an assignment, you can still check a document with SafeAssign if you want to as well. There's sort of a teacher submit button called direct submit that you can use. And to get to that, I'm going to go to course tools, and I'm going to go to SafeAssign, and then click direct submit. So if I was submitting something sort of on my own, this is where I would go to submit it. But I've also gone here just to show you what one of these reports looks like. So this report, you would see it whether you're using the direct submit method or whether you've got this as part of your Dropbox and you're seeing this in a grade. So the report's always the same. This is what it looks like. And it highlights the different sources that it found in common with its database in different colors. So I can click on any one of these and I can see this is what my student submitted and this is what the source found. Now in this case, it's a website, so I can actually click this little button here and I can go to the original website. If it's something that's pulled from the public internet, I can actually go online and see it. And I can go through all of my other sources right here and sort of highlight them and unhighlight them as I see them. So this is another example of another match where this is a student, what my student has written, and this is what another student has written. And it says here student paper because that could be a student in another class or at another institution. So if there's somebody else in your class, it will show you who they are, but it could be somebody else entirely as well. And then overall, you get kind of an overall reading up here of just how much of the work that your student submitted was found in common with some other sources. And you can print and save as well. So it's a pretty flexible report, but also really easy to use and really easy to generate, and I think a great tool to assist you with gathering academic integrity information.
What would be some of your cautions as people think about whether or not to use this tool or as they're reading the report?
Mm-hmm.
As far as some of the surveillance technologies that are being circulated in this time, I'd say this is probably a low level one, but it's one that's frequently used and it's integrated into Blackboard here.
Mm-hmm.
But what would be some of the cautions as people read the report that they're getting, and also some of the limitations of this particular tool?
Yeah, for sure, Joel. It's really good that you mentioned that because it's geared as a plagiarism detection tool, but it really doesn't detect plagiarism. All it does is find commonalities from a larger database or a larger pool that it sees. So in that way, the results that you're getting are very subjective. They're very subject to interpretation. A good example that I always like to tell people is that this tool doesn't know the difference between something that's been cited correctly and something that has been plagiarized, because it's not aware of context. It just is just going to show you matches. I see a lot of in the humanities and in history where where we're using quotes, or probably even in English too, where we see quotes as part of the student submitted work, especially from primary source, that's going to show up almost all the time, and it really increases that overall rating. On sort of that same tangent, I'd say one of the biggest things to really be aware of when you're using this tool is that you have the option to show the students the resulting report automatically. It's off by default. I would really recommend leaving that off because the students don't necessarily understand that context, right? That they don't understand that you as the faculty member have to go through and make a determination here. They just sort of see, oh no, I plagiarized 60% of my assignment, I'm going to get kicked out, I'm going to lose my scholarship, whatever. And the alarm bells and the stress just goes way, way, way high. Um, so it is really a faculty member tool, and it has to be taken with a grain of salt. Having said that, it's great for picking out things that you might have otherwise missed.
When I have used it in the past, and I'll say that I haven't always used it, right? It sometimes depends on the subject that I'm teaching and the type of assignment that I'm asking students to hand in. But when I have used it in the past, I've used it as sort of a starting point, right? Something sounds off or reads off to me. It helps me think about it that way, and I can check here to say, well, is that just me, or is that something that's actually going on in the essay?
Yeah.
There were two other questions that I know came up routinely before for us, and so I wanted to ask them again. Is there a language issue? Does SafeAssign, is it only focused on English texts or English searches?
hmm That's a great question, and it really kind of comes down to what the database looks like. So everything that gets submitted to SafeAssign becomes a part of its database and is therefore searchable. It also indexes journal articles that Blackboard subscribes to and the web overall. So in theory, anything that is becomes part of its database could be searchable. Now, having said that, Blackboard is predominantly used at mostly American schools, and it is an American product. So while it's capable of indexing things in other languages, I think you will find that the quality or the depth of the sources that are available in other languages as part of that database is probably lacking somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Uh, two more questions as we talk
sure,
about
of
this,
course.
and one would be I had some people come forward to me and say that they've felt over the years that SafeAssign has depleted in its usefulness or the quality of that search. Is that, from your perspective, I don't want to say real because it's real to the person who brings it forward, right? But is that something that you've seen bear out in your experience of this particular tool?
Yeah, so one of the things that we don't necessarily know is what journal articles and what things Blackboard subscribes to as part of this service. And journal articles and subscriptions, the cost of those changes on a fairly frequent basis. So it's not overall surprising that maybe some subscriptions are out of reach in terms of cost, that Blackboard just isn't able to include them as part of SafeAssign these days. Um, the other thing, though, that I will
Mm-hmm.
mention is Blackboard added a new tool maybe I think it was about a year ago, where you can actually suggest a URL for SafeAssign to go out and find. So if it's something on the web, something that's publicly accessible, that's not behind like a paywall or a username and password, you can actually tell SafeAssign to go out there and index it, and that will become a part of future searches.
Final question, and this comes from your work in security, Ian. Who owns the data when we upload or ask students to use SafeAssign?
Yeah, we do. So as part of that global database, the unit Trent does not contribute to that global database. So when a student from Trent submits work to SafeAssign, it's not indexable by other organizations. We draw from that database, but we don't contribute to it. So the data is still retained within the Blackboard system. Now it's hosted at Blackboard. It
Mm-hmm.
physically resides at Blackboard, and there's a copy there. But we very clearly maintain sort of the ownership rights to that. And if we ever left Blackboard, we would, of course, ask them to expunge all of that data as well. So Yeah, from a privacy perspective, it's something that we take very seriously. It's something to be definitely concerned with, but we always make sure that that privacy is respected as much as possible.
Ian, thank you so much. One of the great pleasures for me in these conversations is that I always learn a little bit more every time we talk. And so I wanted to thank you for this open and honest conversation about a tool that a lot of us use at Trent. And I think some of us too are also suspicious or wary of. So I appreciate your honesty here.
No problem. Thanks, Joel. It was good to chat. Great.